you doing?
Hi Jamie, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Not too bad. Yourself?
I'm excited today. I say this at the beginning of all my episodes, but no, I'm really excited today to finally get to chat to you. How's things?
That's nice. Aye, good, thanks. Aye. Just ticking along as usual.
You always have this very modest tone to your voice and this surprise that you really want to speak to me type tone, and that's wonderful.
I don't know why anyone would want to speak to me.
Well, we're going to find out, and you're going to prove why over the next hour or so, which will be
All right. Okay.
which will be good. Give a wee quick shout out to our friends over at That Karate podcast. I've been listening to catching up with that over the last couple of days, so the guys will be chuffed that we've gave them a wee shout out.
Aye, Liam, Sean, and Matt. Aye.
Yeah.
And that was good fun talking to them as well, and they're doing really well with that podcast.
I think I've done over lockdown I've always wanted to do one, and just teaching so much and etc. It was always like I wanted to do it right, but then over lockdown I thought, do you know what? I'm never going to be able to do this right unless I just start. So
I've the first step, there's no growth in comfort. You've got to put yourself over the line and try it, haven't you? So is that what you do full time? You're teaching pretty much 7 days a week, sort of idea, or?
We've just I have a day job. We've been very quiet over the last year and a half, but we're opening up another class for our Taekwondo now, and that is us going to be teaching 7 days a week. So
fantastic.
Saturday's more of a conditioning class. We hire a local Muay Thai gym and we do a lot of bag work in that, but that's 8 to 9 in the morning. So I can't really count that, but it's still a day that you have to commit time to,
Yeah.
So so it is a full-time job on top of my very relaxed day job. So right. So as I say, I know that you've took time out the day, so I'll keep you for about an hour. Is that okay?
Aye, that's fine. Aye, just whatever.
Smashing. So Jamie Gray Sensei, we're joined by today, guys, who you're actually the first full martial. Well, we've had a couple of different guests on over the last couple of episodes. You're the first traditionalist, really, that we've had on, if I can call you that. We'll cover that as we move on.
What's traditional?
Exactly. You're the first. Well, do you know what? You're absolutely the first karateka we've had on since the Olympics, and if we can start with that today, my feelings on the Olympics have completely changed just this year, actually, because I was one of the ones I actually made a promise to myself and my students this year. I says, listen, if you hear me criticising any of this stuff, you got to call me out on it, because I want to be a better person this time around. But let's get your opinion first and your thoughts, and maybe I'll jump in later. So karate, first time in the Olympics. Obviously the Taekwondo's there and the Judo's there, but what's your thoughts on martial arts in the Olympics?
Martial arts in general.
Aye, and we can break down to karate and stuff in a bit, but just in general, aye.
No, I think it's great, and there should be more. I really enjoyed. Was it a couple of Olympics ago? The Greco-Roman wrestling and stuff on as well, which was good fun. Martial arts should be in people's lives in more ways than it currently is just now, and get more what's the word, accreditation or more sponsorship and more viewing time and stuff than it currently does. There's something out there for everyone. First time for karate, I think has been absolutely fantastic for karate in general. I think that the athletes that have competed in the Olympics are really, the top of their game in what they do. It's been a great way of getting a bit more publicity for the art out there, showing a slightly different take to the judo and to the taekwondo that's already in there. It's not the type of karate I do. It's not the type that I teach, but there's no reason why it shouldn't be there. and I think that it represented really well in all cases. I never watched an awful lot of it, mainly because I'm a total technophobe. I couldn't figure out how to get, how you watch it or what was on. So I picked up what was on the news or on the BBC channel.
Yeah.
And I was lucky I picked a couple of the fights up and some of the kata and stuff like that. And I've got to be honest, from the sparring side of things, I was quite surprised. I thought it would be very like the standard kind of, or any sparring competition I've seen. It's a lot of bouncing about and not an awful lot of fighting. But I think, and I don't know whether everyone was primed before it or not, but I think they actually displayed really well. There's a lot more, fancy kicking and more aggressive attacking than I've noticed on a lot of competitions that I've watched before. So, good on them. And
what did you make of the final? That was I can't have you on
the heavyweight final.
When the competitor get knocked out, and then now, I mean, if maybe the discussion has to start there that was the rules. So obviously there's contact rules put in place, but again, over to you, actually, Jamie. I'll let you talk on that first because the guy get knocked out, woke up
with a gold medal around his neck. Aye.
Pretty much. So what did you make of that? It was strange.
Well, initially, first watching it, and again, I don't know the rules of competition. I've been so many years out of it. I've got a lot of friends that are into it, and they've explained things. I've asked some questions afterwards and stuff. On initial viewing, watching it, I think, oh God, that's crazy. How can somebody unconscious win it and stuff? But then that's an initial knee-jerk reaction when you look at something like that and you think it's a fighting art. But then you forget about the fact that there's rules there in place, and you're playing to the rules is what the game's all about, in competition. And at the end of the day, it was excessive contact. That's not allowed. So the other guy got disqualified, and he won. It's just really unlucky that it was the heavyweight final of the first Olympics karate was ever in. But on a funny side to that, there's a big there has been for years lots of talks about the karate and what they call the hikate, the pulling hand coming back to the side like this when you punch. Rather than up to the face and guarding, and if you watch the chat, I can't remember his name, the guy that won it, who got knocked out, he pulled it back there and the kick came up and hit him, so he did the perfect hikate and he won gold. Now if he'd put it up here, he'd have won silver. So hikate works, or the pulling hand works, and you pull it back.
That kind of that takes me into where my thinking has been around all of this, because this sticking to the rules thing, or you said it yourself, like it's given so much publicity and got martial arts out there on probably the biggest. I think we get we can get quite narrow-minded, and we don't sometimes. I think we don't even realise how big the Olympics actually is. I mean, you're talking about publicising our martial arts to every nation in the world, like.
Everybody.
Aye, everybody. The podcast has been good for me for bearing my soul type thing and trying to grow up a wee bit, sort of live in front of everybody. And I used to be very, I'm not talking about yesterday, but over the last few years or last few Olympics, which would take us back maybe 10 years, thinking I want to sort of disassociate myself with this as much as possible, because you said it yourself, that's not what we do, and in an umbrella term, it actually is what we do, but specifically, it's not what we do. And then I started thinking, Kareem, you're not actually good enough to be able to say that. Like, for a start, like, how do you know what I mean? Like, how dare you even criticize these guys that are like the top athletes in that genre or in that particular sport in the world, and started sort of growing up. But that then led me to think, even if it's not what we do or not what we want to be associated with, I I had Steve Rowe on the podcast months ago now, and he always used the term, or uses the term, it's like that broad church. There's so much, all these different elements, and you're really quite arrogant and narrow-minded I think now, if you don't see it like that.
Of course, yeah. There's room for everybody, and everything has its purpose and its benefits. You know, it depends what you want to do and what you're into and what your field is. Absolutely, and I totally agree with you. I don't think it's fair anyone slagging off, you know, any art. You know, these guys that were competing out there and all their coaches and all their training partners and everything, they'll take one look at what I do and go, oh, that's absolute rubbish, you know. And you know, he's doing it all wrong.
Yeah.
You know, but there's, as far as I'm concerned, there's room for everybody, and if that's a thing and that's what they want to do, and they're the top of their game. They've got there. They're representing their countries, and I think that's fantastic for the art as a whole. Absolutely.
Gavin Mulholland, who I know that we both know, he put a really good post. This is Friday morning, so anybody wants to go and check out a really good post that Gavin put up. But a couple of weeks ago, he actually posted up, and I think it was relating to the Olympics and talking about what we are talking here. And he was introduced to tournaments as this full contact fighter, and again, Gavin, I apologise if I'm doing you a disservice by reiterating or regurgitating this story, but he went to this open event, and I can't remember the specifics, but it was like, we've got this hard style, I'm going in and I'm going to knock this guy out straight from the off. And he was a lot younger at the time, obviously, and he said that, and it was one of Alfie Lewis's guys who ended up competing against, and he said this blind spot he had, and he just charged forward, going to sort of knock this guy out, and this kid for Alfie Lewis's club sort of sidestepped, boom, boom, double roundhouse kick to the head before Gavin even had a chance to respond. And you know, he says it was a real mind opener that he said, this guy just kicked me twice and before I even had a chance to respond. And it just opened up his respect to maybe to start changing his attitude to lots of things.
Yeah, I remember seeing that post Gavin put on it, and very open of him sharing that as well. But I think, you know, as martial artists, we've all been in that position, haven't we? Where we've gone to a club, we've gone to a competition or a tournament, or joined in the seminar, and we think, you know, you're the Billy Big Boy, and you're the best in here, and then you're the most unlikely person just hand your backside to you in a matter of seconds, and it's leveling, and that's the beauty of the martial arts. I think, you know, you can learn from everybody, and controlling or transcending the ego is one of the biggest things that maybe people who haven't been in the arts for a long time, maybe just quickly rose up through the ranks within their own organisation or whatever, and haven't really travelled about or shared with other clubs or people or styles or organisations, and you know, when it happens to them, it's a bit of a dunt.
Yep.
And it's happened to me plenty of times.
Tell me about it. I think I like to think of myself from an instructor's point of view as being a facilitator of learning, and I don't fancy myself as being very good at all. It's not really up to me to ever say that as well. I think that's quite important. There's nothing worse than somebody saying how good they are. So for if my students find that they're getting a benefit for coming to train with me, then wonderful. But I like to be the type of instructor who brings so many different ideas into the class, and it might be karate, it might be, oh, go and check this judo guy out on YouTube, or I always mention Andy Hug all the time because axe kicking taekwondo is quite a thing, and Andy Hug is being a Kyokushin guy for axe kick, and I think it's really important that you maintain that modesty, isn't it, and open your students up to as much things as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a personal path for both yourself and your students, and I don't want my students to turn out a carbon copy of me. It'd be bloody terrible, you know, because they're not built the same as me, they don't think the same as me, they're not the same shape, and they don't move the same way as me. And I need to make sure that they can understand the principles behind what we're putting across to them. Pick up the knowledge and then make it theirs. And that still falls within the remit of martial arts and passing the knowledge. Shuhari is a kind of Japanese shit, saying about the progression and the growth. You know, do as you're told or copy, and then make it your own, and then advance it and grow. And you know, that whole process. I mean, an example happened just last week, or it was last week, 2 weeks ago. One of my students, I was teaching in Saturday morning class, and the group of black belts are kind of lower grades, and we're going through some application work. And I had shown the application. Everyone was running through it. We did a variation on it, and one of my black belts came back to me and said, you know, they've been trying different things out, and a few wee group, and they said, I don't think that would work well. And initially I'm like, all right, what do you mean? They said, well, see, if you do it this way, you know, this will work better. Because we tried it, we pressure tested it, we played about with it. The way you were doing it is leaving yourself open for a groin strike. And it's far easier just doing it this way. I said, show me. And they showed me. And you know, all right. They used the same principles that we're teaching. They adapted it to themselves. They put themselves in a situation where they wanted it tested. It failed. They changed it and adapted it, and it worked. And then they came back and told me, and you know, I couldn't argue. It was brilliant. And that's the kind of that's what I'm looking for. Thinking for themselves, making it work, and making it fit them rather than fitting a certain shape or style or a template of me.
It's so wonderful when I have people like yourself on, and you'll say things that I also find in my own school. It's very reassuring, and again, that's something. Height, for example, is just one of those ones straight off. I mean, when I was, and again, I always try and not say fighting when I was sparring or competing, but back in the day, it used to be fighting. But when I was always in the heavyweight division because of my increased BMI, and certainly not because of my height or muscle mass, and always used to have to fight what looked to me like monsters, like huge big guys. And sometimes I'll show techniques, and I've got quite a few tall guys in my class, and you get it both ways, because they'll come up and they'll say, like, that's not really working because of XYZ, or you'll get sort of smaller people, or maybe even in the, like, I can't reach up there type thing, and how can we change that? You definitely want to be the way you are and saying, no, let's look at it, open this up and investigate it, and then hopefully it'll fit you.
Otherwise, there's no point in them just doing a shape that they don't have confidence in, they don't understand, it'll never work for them. They're going to throw it out, but they're doing it for the sake of doing it. It doesn't make sense. And I think that's common in a lot of clubs where it's, you know, it's the old Japanese karate. You know, do as you're told, don't answer back, don't question authority, all that kind of stuff. Do it this way because I've told you it's this way. You know, the punch shouldn't be this way, it should be that way. Why? Never mind, just do it. You know, and don't question that. And that's filtered down for years. But I think it's a terrible way of learning. I can understand if the instructor says, no, we want it this way for a reason, and here's why, and explained it. And I know you're maybe finding that difficult at the moment, but this is why we need to do plenty of repetitions, your brain map, and make it fit your body, and until it becomes natural, it becomes habit. But doing it for the sake of doing it, even though it doesn't work, it's just broken. Doesn't make sense.
One of the things that I want to chat to you about a wee bit later, because what I'd like to do next is just give you an opportunity to, as I always do when I get people like you on, it's the excitement of chatting to you, and it's like, let's just jump in. I want to give you a wee chance to just talking everybody through, just a sort of breakdown of your career or journey in karate. But one of the things, and I'll tell you now, just to let you think over this in the back of your mind. I heard you talking about kata and application, and one of one of the things I want to ask about is, you said we at your club practice the application before the kata. Is that am I right in saying that that's what you'd said?
Yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
let's put a hold on that, because I'm super interested in that. And if we can give you a wee few moments to talk us through your journey, and we'll just take a wee step back, because I know we
Sure.
we're right in there for everybody.
Okay, so I just started martial arts 2 months ago. Self-promoted, fifth dan. No, I started. I come from a wee small town down South Ayrshire in Scotland. Maybole. There wasn't much martial arts kicking about at the time. I got taken to a judo class in 1979, and that ran for about 3 years. And then the instructor moved away with work, and a karate instructor took over. So that'd be about 1982 time. I've done karate ever since. The instructor at the time with a black belt, and his son was a brown belt. His son was heavily into the sports side of karate and trained with Pat Mackay, Tommy Burns out at Kilmarnock, and we weren't part of their organisation, but we trained with them on a regular basis, and we followed them about and stuff like that. Also along with the likes of David Coulter and stuff, we trained there. And at the time, I had a massive, just loved it, and I was trying to train everywhere as much as I could when I was younger, still at school. So I'd be training about 5 times a week, and then all weekend would be fitness training or weights or flexibility training. I'd do an hour before class, go to the juniors, train in the background, train the seniors, go home, do an hour, etc., etc. Just passionate about it. There's a brown belt turned up to our club one day. We were doing sport karate type stuff at the time, with a little bit of traditional kind of application work, but not much. And there was a guy who came to the club from another club in Ayr, and every time we would be sparring, and I'd score a point on him and bounce in and out, etc. As soon as I get in close to him, I would just end up on the ground and thumped. Yeah. And I thought, this is strange, because I'm pretty good at the old sparring thing. Why is this happening? Yeah. And started training with him as an extra at his club. It was Jim Hepburn's club in Ayr, the running club. It was a big club, very traditional, and that got me more into the more applied side of things, the more traditional rather than the sport competition side. And since then, it's just been a kind of roller coaster. I've always done karate. I cross train a lot, lots of other influences, and train with people like Stephen Chan, Kirby Watson, the Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, the Kobudo. That's all the weapon stuff and everything from way back in the 80s. Cross training in judo, aikido. I did taekwondo for a wee while. It's cross training. I still train with Scott McMillan just now. Sure. I've done for a good few years. Not in taekwondo, in applied stuff. With that. I've done a bit of SLR, a bit of kung fu, a bit of pretty much. And the more I go and train elsewhere, the more we're all the same. We can only move so many ways. It's just different styles, if you want to call it styles, have a focus in a different area on how they do things and how it's handed down. But when you boil it all back to, to quote Patrick McCarthy, the contextual premise of what you're doing is defending yourself against habitual acts of physical violence, and they're the same regardless of what style you do. So I've got a list of people that I train. I'm a member of a dojo down in Wigan, as well as Steve Lowe Sensei. I regularly meet up and train with the guys in Fife in the Yosekan, which is the first style of karate in the UK. Very close ties with them. Got Zanshinkai in Glasgow with Kenny Davis stuff. We do a lot with these guys up there. Obviously pre-pandemic, start up again, and the club I've got just now is more. It's actually morphed more into a study group than a club. We've always been non-profit making. It's about study. Very quickly when we started the club 12 years ago, whenever it was, it grew very, very quickly. And we had massive numbers. It was too big, too much to actually teach in any depth what we do. So we trimmed that right down. We've got a group of students that have been with me for years, and we can delve a bit deeper and stuff, and we can look more into the art. So I'm really lucky that way. We get guys, James Kincannon, Colin Steele, travel down from Glasgow, every weekend to train us at 7:30 in the morning. It was a big commitment for these guys from Girvan coming up, Marco, Wellington, Bobby, stuff that all, and it's a good wee blend and mix and a lot of experience in there.
Yeah.
It's good.
Something you said there, and you might have seen me noting something down. There absolutely will be exceptions to what I'm going to say, but when I was coming through the same as you did, it was all consuming, and like I still say this probably every class, and I sometimes I deliberately say it just to try and inspire students to go and look at different sources. But I genuinely like either reading about martial arts or doing martial arts or watching videos or listening to podcasts, or it was all consuming. Do you think that like kids and even adults nowadays that try to get I've stopped taking students once a week now, and I did, but after the pandemic, the students that stayed the course were the ones that were training before the pandemic 2 or 3 times a week. Some of them even 4 and 5 times a week, and that commitment sort of shone through because those are the ones that done Zoom with us and met in the middle of Strathclyde Park and all of this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm doing a disservice to my own time and really a big disservice to the student by just having a wee kid rock up for 1 hour a week. And it's, I don't know, maybe that'll come back to bite me in the bum. I don't know. But at the minute, I'm happy. I'm happy with that choice. And the point I'm trying to ask about is there too much going on nowadays? We didn't have that. So we were just, it was martial arts all in. And maybe that's why we're still doing it 35, 40 years later. Whereas it's a struggle now because it's football and rugby. And I had a student, this is the God's honest truth. I had a young kid and he was really quite natural. One of those kids you get in and you think, well, this wee kid's going to be really good. And he, I can't believe I'm going to say this, he left because he wanted to pursue Pokemon. So remember this game where the kids were walking about? There was actual championships getting organised for this. And his mum came up to me and said that this is what he was going to do. Now, the more mature Kareem thinks, do you know what? If that makes him happy and that's absolutely cool. But I've never lost a student to an actual video game before. So my point being is there too much? Is martial arts in general getting watered down because of that, do you think? Or I think that's the question I'm trying
to... I think the answer to that is how you respond to it. You know, you can't force people to come and train.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, you shouldn't change the way you teach to counteract that and make it, we'll do a bit of Pokemon while you're here, you know, or something like, I don't know. You've got to be honest about what you're teaching and what you're training, what you want to do and what your path is. Yeah. Some will want to join that journey and some won't. If you want to, for example, and this is, by the way, I don't have any issues with full-time martial artists or people, you know, doing a fitness class or a little ninjas class or whatever, or you know, watching down what they do because that's their living and they're calling it this, that, and the next thing, or whatever. I think if you're honest with what you're doing, if you want to make a business out of it and make money out of it and turn it into you know, many clubs and big bucks coming in, then you need to look at, you know, what the catchment is and what you need to do to keep people involved. Yeah. And if that includes a Pokemon class, you know, then that's what you do. But yeah, you know, you be honest about it. If you want to teach, I don't know, traditional Taekwondo or whatever your flavor is, yeah, and keep that lineage going all the way through, and the core skills and the focus on that, then you're going to have people that it will jive with and people that won't. Yeah. You know, and it's finding that team, and it might be a smaller funnel that's there, but ultimately you'll be happy with that. They'll be interested in what you're doing, and you shouldn't deviate with it. So you're always going to have that blend, and I think that's where with us, I stopped taking students probably before the pandemic, a good 2 or 3 years before the pandemic, and in the adults class we Well, in the juniors class, we stopped taking them on because we felt that as the juniors, it's all applied karate we do.
Yep.
So as the juniors are getting up through the ranks, there's more depth they need to go in, and we're constantly having white belts coming in. They were constantly going back to basics and stuff like that, and they were missing out. So we thought, right, let's stop that just now, that intake, and let's spend the time with them, because eventually they'll transition into the adults group. Yeah. The adults group, we used to get quite a lot of phone calls, kind of, oh, I'm thinking about joining, and we stopped that to a point where for a while it was only really kind of people that were already martial artists that were looking to go a little bit deeper into their art, a bit more into applied stuff, a bit more specialised, or a bit more pragmatic karate, as opposed to the competition side of things. If they want to do competitions or that style, then I'm the wrong club for them. And we've got a good solid group that understand the way I'm going, the path we're heading in the direction, and everyone kind of gets it and it is learning, and that works best. I forgot what the question was. I can't.
No, I say this often. Most of the time on this podcast there isn't questions. It's just a conversation, which is great. Like I think for two experienced martial artists sitting here having this chat, again, everybody, you have to sort of prefix this by saying, obviously everybody is free to do as they choose and as is best for them. But I mean, I'm happy to admit the first couple of replies that I had to send to people to say, well, no, actually, this is the minimum. You have to be there at least twice a week. It was kind of, well, do you really want to send this, Kareem? But then sometimes you've just got to.
Yeah, there's a bit of, you say to your students, if you ever sit down and say to your student, do you want me to be a good instructor? Do you want me to pass on my knowledge? Do you want me to give you the benefit of my, however many years of experience, and you want me to put it in a program for you and help you develop? Yeah. Well, I'm looking for you to be a good student, and that requires, it's a bit of come and go. I'm not going to charge you, the price of a yoga class at 20 quid an hour. There's going to be a bit of come and go here, and there's a commitment that I need back if you want me to do that to you. And I think a lot of instructors forget that now, just the amount of knowledge and the what they're actually bringing to the table, because we're competing against, the ones that are competing against, the aerobics class. I don't even know if they do aerobics anymore, but all these fitness classes would be like 20, 25 quid an hour and stuff. Somebody's gone and done a week-long course, and there's now a qualified Pilates instructor.
You're so right there, because that's something that I think to develop as not just as a martial artist, but as a person, you get stumbling blocks, and you have to choose to either step back or you're pushing ahead. And that I felt quite. How did I feel? There was a stage where I was thinking to myself, do you know what? This isn't, and it can't be all about pleasing students. And I still haven't found a way of saying this without sounding really big-headed. And maybe you can help me, and maybe people out there can comment and say, yeah, you're definitely big-headed, Kareem, in the comment section. But it shouldn't always be about I want the student. The student should also want the instructor. And again, that I've said it, but it's like, no, you're
big-headed, are you, Kareem?
I know. I'm by that now. I've kind of progressed past that now, where I'm confident enough and happy enough in my own self to say, no, students got to do a bit of work here as well. This isn't just about trying to get students and, well, we'll try and please you and etc. etc. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. You're bang on, and I've got a really simplistic way of looking at this. And anyone that's ever trained with me for a period of time will know, so any of my assistant instructors will tell you this. I don't give a monkeys who trains with me. I don't. And that's my kind of thing. I do it for me to study, and I've got a group of friends that come along and we share that study, and that's the way we look at it. And we're on the same kind of path. And we've been really fortunate that a lot continued with me and travel a wee bit to do that, and get a good kind of network throughout the country where we go and share. But it's always been, I think, when we started the club, the first thing we did was, and this was just for us, we decided that money can't come into this. It can't be a blocker for what we do or a influencer on how we do it. It's got to be, this is where we want this to go and what we want to study and pass on and train. And instantly, the reason we started the club was because of our kids. We're getting to an age where they've been doing some freestyle and things like that. I was ready for them. We wanted them to start doing what we were doing. But when we laid down our rules and how we're going to run this club, the other thing was we have to keep learning. We have to keep pushing ourselves every 4 to 6 weeks to go and train elsewhere, or join in a class, or do a different style, or do something and read and follow up and share and keep that going. And when you do that, then it becomes, you become subconsciously, and I'm not saying this big-headedly, but you become like the person who's steering the ship, and the rest are following it, and not just following, but they're adding to it, and they're giving their perspectives and they're having their inputs, like the thing I mentioned earlier on about one of my students, the second Dan assistant instructor. I said, you know what, you're right, I missed that. You picked it up. That's the way we'll do it from now on. And but yeah, so the whole having the back of my head, and I don't say it, I don't think I have to say it to my students, but if you want me to be a good instructor, then just be a good student back. It's
spot on. Right, okay, let's get a wee bit more technical and in-depth then, and go back to the other thing I do on this podcast is contradict myself a lot. So having just said that there's not always questions, I did ask a question before, and that was about the application before patterns. This is an area where I'm still trying to find, or try to really think or meditate on. Kareem, what do you actually think about this, or where are you in this? And this is about applications from kata or patterns, and just how that all works. So that's why I was really interested when you said, well, we work on the application and then study the pattern, or the kata, sorry. Can you explain that a wee bit more to us? Do a better job than I've just done.
Yeah, it's my view is that the kata is the nucleus of karate. The form is the nucleus of the system. Ultimately, the reason the forms were created were to record the application-based practices of that master, that style, that system, that whatever to pass down. It's not the movement as such, but the principle contained within the movement. So remember back, or if I put it in the context, so first of all, my definition of the kata is the template to remember the two partner drills.
Okay.
That makes sense. And the two partner drills are habitual acts of physical violence, or physical violence, or scenarios that you find yourself in. And the two partner drills is how you practice them. And then the template is how you remember them or you pass them on. Okay, in solo form. So if you think back to why would you create a pattern, or why would you create a form to remember them, and why wouldn't you just video it? Well, take yourself back to the 1800s. They didn't have video cameras. In Okinawa and Japan, you're not allowed to write stuff down, or not all the time. A lot of stuff get destroyed. So how would you do it? If you wanted to explain to somebody, if somebody's coming in to grab you, for example, or push you at the start, the starting dialogue, the monkey dance of aggression, and potentially could kick off, what's the best thing for me to do? What way should I turn? Should I just stand there and let him push me? Is he going to hit me first, or should I hit him back? If I'm going to hit him, how would I do it? Should I move offline to him so that he's on my centre line, but his centre line, I'm not on his? Should I have one hand just standing down, not doing anything, and just hit with one hand? Or should I control his limbs? Where's the best place to hit him? Would it be the head and the neck? You know, probably, or would it be in his, you know, his stomach or his leg or something?
Yep.
You know, and how do I record that? And by doing the two partner drills, or the explaining what an attack is, or what the start of it is, and it kind of ramp up, then you very quickly have two people working away at applying stuff. And whether it's a simple hook coming in and you block and you punch, or a push coming in and you move to the side, letting it go out the way, and then you hit whatever, is working, developing skill. And if I was to take that push to the side, grab hold of the arm and do an uppercut, then before you know it, you've got this movement here.
Okay.
Trap his arm, hit him in the jaw, then hit him in the jaw again, controlling the limb on the outside of him, hitting them here, hitting them there, or hitting them there. There's the best place to knock somebody out. If you're teaching a beginner, hit them really hard in the jaw. Whereabouts in the jaw? There, or there.
Yeah.
You know? And then we've got 1, 2, and 3. You know, the very first move of the very first kata we teach. So the principle of moving offline to it, you're getting out of the road. Then you've got options. If you can grab the hand, great. If I can hit them, where will I hit them? You know, and explaining all that, then drilling it live, adapting and varying it based on other scenarios, and then putting it into live practice. And that's how we kind of do the katas. And then the solo forms a template to remind us to do that. So when I turn 90 degrees for the opening move, you know, from facing forward, and I turn 90 degrees to do this, it doesn't mean that somebody's attacking me there. It means I need to be 90 degrees to the person. So I'm turning, letting it go past me, and now I'm 90 degrees to him, and I can uppercut him. Does that make sense?
Brilliant. Yeah. What I have conversations, and have had conversations in the past with friends that were Thai boxers or kickboxers, or I've had this conversation a number of times. And even if we take let's put a tick in the box against applications, so you can definitely we can absolutely get applications for confrontations or self-defense from the kata. They don't believe that oftentimes, and it's a waste of time. As someone who's so deeply analytical of the kata as yourself, what else can we take from kata apart from self-defense? Because the point I make is that if you only see it for that purpose, I think, and again, this is one of those can open, worms everywhere moments. That if you only take it for that, you're missing a huge majority of what it is. Or you're more than welcome to disagree with that, and it's just a form of learning self-defense.
Oh no, it's more than that. It's the nucleus of everything.
Yeah.
So within the kata, or form or pattern or whatever, you call it. Obviously, you do it in a solo form. It has its health benefits, it has its speed, its reaction time, your movement, your structure, your stretching, your flexibility, your focus, your mindset, all the rest of it, and just that solo form of doing it has that fitness benefit, if you like, and the remembering principle. Understanding the principle rather than the technique is key. So, you mentioned kickboxers and Thai boxers; they're sports. Ultimately, they're for the ring. They train to be in the ring.
Yeah.
Karate originally is a civilian self-defense system. So what it doesn't show you in the kata is the flicking in the chukis, the spitting in the face, the using the thumb to take the eye out, all that kind of stuff that's illegal in sports and things. A lot of that was taken out from teaching when it got put into universities and stuff and propagated around the world, and into Japan. It became a do. A way of life rather than a jutsu, an aggressive fight, civilian self-defense system. Where the only options were really to either disable, maim, or kill, and that was the options that you had in defense. And when you start analyzing the kata, so lots of katas contain lots of different things, and they go from the basic mechanical moves. If you think of a car, how a car works, you've got the mechanical side of things, the wheels turn around, the axles go, you've got a handbrake. Most handbrakes are electrical now, actually, so that's into the electrical system. So the mechanical system's the kicky punchy, the electrical system is like, so your nervous system, your pressure points, and your off switches, etc. Your fuel and air, so your petrol and your airs, like your breathing, your throat, and blood deprivation.
Yeah.
Air and blood deprivation, strangulations. So now you've got in katas, you've got everything from pressure points, joint destruction, manipulation, strangulations, choking, grasping, gripping, and tearing, spitting, flicking, and biting. As well as the kicky punchy that you see in fresh air. You've got to understand these. The stances, for example, are used to either limit your opponent's movement or to put weight and mass into a technique. If a stance is like I don't know what you would call it in Taekwondo, but a horse riding stance, a low stance, it means you're dropping your weight down. So, what you're doing to your opponent, you're bringing them down. If you're going forward, you're pushing something into it. If you're sinking back, it's all based in close range and understanding that. And it's one of these very difficult things to explain without touching and holding and demonstrating, if that makes sense. But to give an idea, we start in our club, we've got the Pinan katas. I don't know if you know them, the Heian Pians, and there's 5 of them, and they have a very kind of, in my mind anyway, a very definitive structure in the application, the principles contained within them. The first one's really simple. It's what you teach a beginner. Where should you hit somebody? If you have to hit them, by the way, hitting somebody and fighting is the last, it's the last 5% of self-protection. Awareness, avoidance, getting out of the road, de-escalation, controlling space, all that kind of stuff happens. When you have to hit somebody, you're in a fight, ultimately. Kata shows you the first move, Pinan Shonan, it tells you where to hit, the jawline or the neck. What happens when they put their arms up? It shows you how to clear the arms and hit them in the jaw and the neck, control them from a safe distance using combative principles. The next kata up, Pinan Nidan, says, well, what happens if they grab me? How do I get rid of their arm and hit them in the head or the neck? What happens if it gets close and I can't do that? Do I need to throw them? Well, that's where Pinan Sandan comes in. So it starts teaching you about kuzushi, balancing, displacement, and throwing people. Yondan's the kind of master class, so the detail, whereabouts should I hit them in the neck? Here should we hit the carotid artery? What position should the hand be in? What am I doing with the other hand? How am I keeping myself safe? What angle should I be to them to limit them hitting me and for me to get the most out of them? Center line control and stuff like that. And then Godan, the final one's a kind of what if so what else? So what happens if they've got me in a position? How to reverse it? How to get out of it? How to hit them? How to start breaking stuff and things. And when I started to understand this, it was like opening the door and going, this all just makes so much sense now. And you can take everything that's in there and you can put them back down into the lower katas and start exploring that. You can build drills out it. All of a sudden, you've got fighting drills, you've got self-defense drills, you've got technical drills, you've got groundwork drills, you've got floor drills, throwing drills, grasping and controlling, strangulation, blood deprivation, choking, limb destruction, and it's all contained within the simple katas if you just know how to look at it. This is turning into a podcast for shout outs, but I was actually commenting on another mutual friend of yours, John Clark's Facebook today about John loves a good karate kata post, so he does. Has he done one today, has he?
Oh, it's Friday. He's got another one to do this afternoon. So I'd commented and said to him, like, the karate katas, I thought we were bad in Taekwondo for people disagreeing over orders and what should be done where and when, etc., etc. It's one of those conversations. I said this to him. I said, we'll have this conversation face to face. And if ever the opportunity arose for me to come and train with yourself, for example, I would welcome the opportunity for you to explain.
Welcome anytime.
Of course, I appreciate that. I would love to have a better appreciation of the kata system within karate, because I thought ours was complicated with one association doing this and another association doing that. So I'm the same as you, that the Did you find that was like as a maturity thing, that you just kind of, as I got older, I started appreciating them more and more, and now, like, I'm all in with patterns or hung or tools or kata or whatever system you're calling them. But yeah, with maturity, that came to me that I wanted to actually study them more.
I think it was, well, with me, it was just a point in time where I found the right person to open the door for me.
Yeah.
And as soon as he did, because we messed about all through the 90s and stuff. I was part of a small group, all just downgrades, we did about application stuff, but we were kind of like a collector of katas, you know, still we're doing hundreds of katas. And you just spent all your time trying to remember how to do them in fresh air. You didn't delve very deep in it. Certain little bits and bobs. And then I met, can't even remember how I found out about him, a guy called Ian Abernethy. And got a couple of his DVDs and went along to one of his seminars. And he's got a fantastic way of teaching. And it just clicked, and it was like a light bulb going off.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's so obvious. Obvious, that's what that is. And when you think about it, it's a combative art. Why would you do it, 2 meters away from each other, jumping in and jumping out? It's meant to be from there.
Yep.
And when you start looking at your moves and your principles within it from that range, it opened up light bulbs, And I went and studied with him for a good while. I spent about 4 years running through his course and stuff, going to courses and training with him, and a full instructor under Ian. And even now, I train with him on a fairly regular basis, and light bulb moments go off all the time. He's got a fantastic way of just making the complex look simple, and explaining it and getting it across, which was similar with, like I said, Russell Jarmisty. I don't know if you know Russell.
I do know Russell. Aye.
I know Russell well, and I've not seen him for probably a couple of years since the lockdown. But I trained with him for a good wee bit, and we talked a lot. I had him up at the club and stuff. And he's another one. He doesn't say he's a traditional martial artist, but he's more traditional than a lot of people. Yeah. He's reality based, and he's just got a knack with explaining stuff. And every time when I see Russell's working when we're training stuff, all I can see is kata. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's in that move. That's in that. That's in that kata. That's that. Oh, that just makes sense. Steve Lowe's another one. Mm-hmm. In Wigan. Steve's got he's got a really strong mindset on just keeping it simple and just short, sharp, and power delivery, and no messing about, no silly nonsense, just direct to the point and effective applied karate. And so it wasn't a maturity thing. It was just finding the right person who has the knowledge to start explaining this, and then from there. Once you've just changed your mindset slightly to looking at it a different way, all of a sudden, Kareem, you'll look at things and you just go,
I know,
and you can't do it. You'll never go back to doing it the way you did before. So when you're practicing the solo form, all of a sudden, there's bodies flying left, right, and centre in your mind of what you're doing.
The other wee bit that maybe is attached onto that was, and again, I noted this down, a good friend of mine in Taekwondo, Stephen Gale, he's been on the podcast a couple of times, and when you were talking there about, it's not so much the watering down of the system, but the packaging of it a wee bit different. He talks oftentimes, we've had this conversation a number of times, about Taekwondo or karate. I'm absolutely settled on now that Taekwondo was a direct descendant of karate. I know a lot of my fellow Taekwondo enthusiasts will debate that, but that's I think it is anyway. Taekwondo was designed or redesigned as a combat system, not as an art of self-defense. Much like as you're talking about with karate there, like it was about getting it into the Japanese universities and being able to package it up differently so that it could be, and when I say sold, I mean it on probably both uses of that term, but it's different selling an art of self-defense that females and children and this and that can be part of than a combat system that was used by Japanese soldiers or Korean soldiers, where like an outer forearm block, for example, wasn't actually to stop a punch. It was actually to smash into somebody's cheekbone or do you know that this sort of stuff? And where I'm actually at with some of the Taekwondo patterns now, myself and one of my sort of senior students have played about with this a couple of times. Some of our patterns, the outer forearm block is a great example. We have a pattern, Dosan. There's Taekwondo people going to listen to this and go crazy, but hey ho, it's my podcast and say what I like. So that's it. But Dosan, for example, starts with a outer forearm block and then a reverse punch. If you apply that the way it's sold as a method of self-defense, if you block the punch, you're a mile off your counter punch. You're an absolute mile off. If you readjust your thinking ever so slightly and see the outer forearm block as a hammer fist smash to the face, that hip it comes straight through, the punch is beautiful, and your distance is spot on.
Let me add to that. So I don't know much about I can never remember the names. Scott keeps coming up with the names and stuff, and I can never remember. But when you're saying that the outer forearm, take that another step forward. If you think just now, the way you're doing that, you're missing one of the combative principles there, where you're both on the centre line facing each other, and you're doing it. So where's the best place for you to be is off this centre line, isn't it? So if you go to the outside of the centre line and you use that as pulling his head back, now you've got a throat punch, which will kill him straight away. So you go to the outside and pull his head back and then punch him. And it's still the same this and that same shape and movement. So you're now taking it from being from a distant, a nice safe block and a counter that doesn't work, to a strike, a mechanical, and then a punch to the body or whatever it is, which is still relatively safe, but it will have a desired effect, to a completely coming off, using the combative principles of getting off the line first of all, and then pulling the head back, and then you've got a clear, because when you pull the head back like this, the throat opens up and you've got a throat punch which will kill them or put them down first time, pretty much. So and you can develop that and you can take that on. And if you look at even your punch, the second punch that's coming out, if you do that with an open hand and you grab the throat and then close it and make the fist shape, then you've got control and a thing. So from that two techniques, we've just discussed about 5 different options for it based on the principle of the movement.
Well, again, there's one other subject I want to cover, and I know I can't keep you for too long, but this sort of might lead into it. The other thing that was that's been challenging me sort of mentally for the last number of years now is this breaking down. The more I try and prove Taekwondo wrong, or the more I try and prove the traditional arts, the karate, the Taekwondo, etc., against the sort of sport element. So I'm really dissecting absolutely everything. I'm going to try and prove this wrong. It's with all things, especially science. That's what science is all about. The more they'll take something and absolutely try to prove that it's wrong, and then they find out that it's actually right. That's how that system works. That's what I've been doing with our arts, you and I, karate, Taekwondo, the stuff with all these long horse riding stances or forward stances. They don't work. That's never going to work in the street. Nobody said that particular stance in the way that you're seeing it as the sport orientated fighter. Nobody's saying that's for the street. But me personally, I'm trying to really prove, is this a waste of time or is it really valuable time? And every time I do it, I fall on the valuable side. Really try to prove my own art as being wrong and bad and useless, and there's no point to it. Every single time there absolutely is.
I totally agree with you. I mean, there's far cleverer people before us that created these, these forms and stuff that put them together. And we're frankly, scrambling about in the dark, trying to understand them and backwards engineer. Sometimes you can over-engineer and you miss the point. Stances, for example, is a prime example. You know what? Stance is, but here's probably a controversial thing. When I'm explaining a stance to a pupil to start with, if you're going to do a technique, you don't do it, or in the street, you wouldn't automatically go into a stance first and then do a technique. I think this is going to kick off, in a big long stance or whatever. You do it from where you are, but your body motion, if I'm going forward, to stop me falling over or stepping again, if I put one foot in front of the other, that's going to stop me. And it would look like, we would call it Zenkutsu, or forward stance. Your back leg straight, front leg bent, and the weight going forward. But all the magic happens in between. So if you think of a golf swing starts here and it ends up there, but where's the magic happen? It happens in the motion going through. It's the same as stance. So if I want to deliver my weight, boom, this way. If I want to drop it down, so for example, I'm doing the knife hand and I want to drop it down at a 45-degree angle right across and into them, then I would use maybe, we would call it Niko Ashidachi or cat stance or Kokotsudachi, or an angled stance and drop it down or back the way. If I want to dump somebody in the ground, then I would use a horse riding stance because my weight drops. Or if they grabbed hold of me there and I wanted to bring the arm down to strike up, then I'll drop into the stance to bring the weight down and counteract stuff. So the stances are a great way of delivering weight or mass into a technique.
That's brilliant, by the way. That's absolutely. Sorry I interrupted you there, but that's brilliant. My head's just doing ding, 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 ding.
All right.
I've got a black belt class tonight that I'm going to teach, and my head's doing. Sorry, I interrupt you. Carry on.
And the also thing with stance, if you think when you step into a stance, you use stances for controlling your opponent. Stand on their feet, dead simple. They can't move. You can hit them. And they can't move back out of it. We use this all the time, especially in close range. When you bring that system from fighting at this level or practicing at this level just into a slower down version, but this 18 inches apart, and stand on somebody's foot and then do the technique, the effect is multiplied tenfold because they can't move or get out of the road of it. Using the feet to trap and off balance is another prime example of the stance. It's hard to explain this when we're on another end of a Zoom call, but and these all come from kata. They're all contained in there. They show you the angles to step. They show you the type of stance. Otherwise, everything would just look like a forward stance. You know why they got all these different stances? It's because that's the way you're going to take your partner or manipulate the mass or control their body. And once you get your head around that, it's not that difficult once you've opened the door and you're looking at it with a different pair of specs on. All of a sudden you're like, and you'll there was one example. I went trained with Mal Morney. I don't know if you know him from Salat. Mal Morney. He was up at the Grip House in Glasgow, and he was really good friends. A good friend of mine, Paul Smith, one Chung guy who's sadly no longer with us, we did a very, very simple technique where he did an arm bar, which would be the gate arm, the downward block. So I'm holding onto the hand and I use it on the back of the elbow to force them down. Then he just reached his foot out to the side, like a kind of, you're doing a stance like this. And then he just changed the stance into a forward stance facing that way after he trapped my foot. And it's just an off balancing. Very simple, very easily. And a wee light bulb went off in me. Why didn't I think of that? And now I see that everywhere. In transitions and controlling and limb control, and it's just another use for the stance. So the stance was never meant to be where you start or you fight in that stance. You fight where you fight, it kicks off when it kicks off. The stance is where you end up once you've done the magic in between with the motion and the delivery of power.
As I say, that's so interesting. I'm going to go in and definitely play around with that. Expect your phone to be dinging all weekend, by the way.
Aye, no problem at all.
What about this? What about that? Right, one other thing. I'll tell you what I wrote down here when I was taking my notes, and I'll try and explain this point. I wrote down, ask Jamie, what is karate? Right? And again, I know we mentioned Gavin Mulholland earlier on. He kind of beat me to the punch today because he put a post up about being just fed up trying to explain what karate is. And I'll tell you where my thinking is at the minute, and you can possibly help me live on the podcast here.
Oh, no.
No. You'll be not at all. You'll be able to answer this very well, I'm sure. I don't want to be, and again, people will be listening to this thinking, here he goes again. But I don't mind admitting that live on the show. I don't mind admitting that I'm really feeling like a student at the moment, like really, really like a beginner. I'm trying to clear my head of all the crap and just try and find answers. That's where I am on my martial arts journey at the moment. I don't really necessarily want to be a Taekwondo guy. I want to be a martial artist at the minute who studies the Taekwondo forums as my base. Because if I say to myself, I'm a Taekwondo guy, then in a strange way, I could say, well, nah, Jamie, you're doing that block wrong because that's that down block's wrong, or that rising block's wrong, or no, you should be punching here. And anybody that's been in martial arts for any amount of time knows that there's only a limited amount of ways you can punch and do a front kick or a side kick. So I want to be able to do more than just what's in our restricted. I say that, so that leads me to the question, because I'm starting to haver now, but you can't be as quality a martial artist as you are by just being a karate guy. Yeah, I'm talking to you by just being a karate guy. And I think that's what Gavin was maybe trying to get across as well. It's like people saying, no, that's not karate. What do you mean that's not karate? So what is karate?
Right. First of all, for me, and my interpretation of karate is I am karate and karate is me, because that's what I do and that's what I choose to call it. To somebody else who does karate, they may look at my karate and say that's not karate because it's not the same as what they do and how they do it. And to be honest, I don't care. For me in karate, there's always been throws, there's always been ground. Like you just said, you use a phrase I use a lot. If we're lucky, we've all got a head, a body, 2 arms, 2 legs that move and work. There's only so many ways you can move. It's just a label for that overall that martial arts movement combatively. To some, there's the maybe like the kind of the health benefits of it and that side of it, or the combative, or the full contact fighting, or the pressure point side, or the holistic art, or the pragmatic way of doing it, the applied stuff, or the competition. It's all the same. It depends who it is. You could define karate a lot easier in the 80s because there were very few clubs kicking about, very few instructors, and they were all, it had to be this way. They had a definitive answer that this is how you do that. Yeah. Now, as we've grown and we've learned and we can communicate and train more, and the world's opened up to a much smaller place. It's what is karate. To me, karate is me. It's what I do, and it's what I choose to call it. It might not be to somebody else, but I think I don't even know how to describe it past that. If somebody said to me, "Oh, do you do?" Anyone that ever asks you what's karate or describe karate, they've already got a preconceived idea.
Yep.
It's one of these well-known terms, and I'm never going to change that. So I'm happy with the fact that I do what I do, study it as best I can, and to me that's karate.
I think just the wee bit just to try and to finally ask you about is, it's like, let's say I come down to tear and take a class with yourself, and you say, let me see how you do this spinning kick. So I do a spinning kick, and then you like the way I do a spin. Not just me, it could be anybody. You like the way you see a spinning kick. That doesn't have to replace your, and I know this sounds simple to a lot of people, but it's actually not. You don't have to replace your karate spinning kick with my spinning kick. Just know both of them. And then if you see somebody else's, know another one, and another one, and another one, and that's still your karate. It's still my martial arts or taekwondo.
I can't do a spinning kick.
Well,
I used to be able to maybe.
I don't know why. I don't know why I come up with spinning kick there. My own students will have a chuckle at that, but
I'd get dizzy and fall down.
But the point stands. The point.
Aye.
The point stands.
And that's it. As we said earlier on, no way through this podcast, we kind of alluded to this. Each their own, and there's room for everybody. And that's the beauty of it. I think when you get in strong, I better be careful how I say this, but in association karate, then there is a defined way of doing things and a defined requirement for belt ranks, for competition, for etc. And that's what they call karate, but that's back to the principle, that's what they call it. And anything out with that isn't karate to them, or it should be changed. If I punch like this and somebody comes up and moves it that way, for example, that's the way it should be done. That's fine. That's the way I would generally do it myself, rather than that way kind of thing. It's still karate. It's a technique. And you can break it down to the nth degree for us, to however you want and try and describe it, and you'll never please all of the people. But to me, I know where I'm going. I know what I'm doing. And you said you feel as though you're like a new student type thing. I have that feeling all the time. I'm always learning. Every day is a school day, and I've got my own dojo out in the garden, and when I go out there and I start, I'm going to look at something today, and I'm going to work through this. If it's just hitting the makiwara, the punching boards and stuff, and I'll try different things, and I'll find out what works, and there'll be wee light bulb moments going off, and I'll go and train with somebody else. I'll take one thing out of that I didn't know before, and I thought, that fits in nicely with everything there. It's not collecting things; it's adding to. And different views and perspectives, and I think as long as you keep doing that, then you're still learning. You're not having that, to quote an old kind of, I don't know if it's Confucius or something. A pool that doesn't have a stream running in and running out becomes stagnant. I can't remember who said that. Some
Jamie Gray Sensei today said
so
that.
some holy karate master somewhere. I might even get him for the Koshi actually. I can't remember, but. It's true, you've got to keep looking, you've got to keep delving, you've got to keep. If you're doing that, then what you're doing is, to me, karate. It may look different to your spinning kick, but you're still doing, you're still on the same path. And I think taekwondo is the exact same as karate. I think there's lots in taekwondo that people don't know because they haven't unlocked that door and looked through it yet. And taekwondo is still very like the karate was in the 80s, very association driven, and very, it has to look this way, it has to be done this spinning kick way rather than that spinning kick way. And as soon as that starts to relax a little bit and people start making it fit them rather than them fit it, then they'll start opening the door and experiencing different things, and all of a sudden it will just all start falling into place, and you'll think, God, I didn't know we had throws in taekwondo. I didn't know we had pressure points in taekwondo. I didn't know we had strangulations, seizing and tearing in taekwondo. It's all there. I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, listen.
Well done for ages.
No, not at all. We're a fair bit over an hour now, but that was so enjoyable.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. So we'll get this released, guys, on Saturday morning. As we usually do for doing them weekly. But Jamie Gray Sensei, honestly, I've so enjoyed that. That's been a brilliant chat.
Thank you very much. It's gone like that. It's been really quick.
The best ones generally do is just you get into the conversation and then the time gets away from you.
No, thanks very much. I appreciate being asked.
No worries.
Nice.
Have a brilliant weekend, okay?
You too.
Take care of yourself. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.